Gentlemen, welcome back. Good morning to you. We got a special treat back on the line, back on the program. We have Dr. Warren Farrell back with us. He is, of course, the author of the great book, The Boy Crisis, Why Our Boys Are Struggling and What We Can Do About It. Dr. Farrell, welcome back to the program, sir.
I'm looking forward to being with you again.
Yes, sir. It's always a pleasure. I've got this article here in front of me, and, this was, I guess, back on the 9th, so last week. A new law signed by California Governor Gavin Newsom is banning schools from suspending disruptive kids. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's a problem, basically, because on the one hand, if schools are really prepared to handle the disruptive kids, that's one thing, but that we're a long way and away from doing that effectively. And so if the disruptive kids go home, as was possible in the past, there is oftentimes problems without having a father at home, without having discipline at home, and so keeping them at school is good if you have good opportunities at school for the kids. So, for example, I talked to Barbara Nemko. She's the superintendent of schools at Napa County, and she said it's more effective if their kids are in a separate room, that they're sent to a separate room where they're with other kids and they're handled effectively there, that there's discipline there, that they're expected to do their schoolwork there, and then in addition to their schoolwork, they have other discipline times, and they're taught postponed gratification. All of this is handling things. When I did the research for 14 years for the Boy Crisis, one of the things I found was that what happens at school is secondary to what happens at home. The boy crisis resides where dads do not reside, and so when you have no father at home, and then a boy goes from a fatherless home to a school without male teachers, he has no constructive male role model to guide his testosterone as he gets, especially into teenage years where the testosterone is extremely high. And testosterone that is poorly guided or not guided at all becomes the world's most destructive force. Testosterone well guided by a good involved father with a combination of love and discipline, who sends his child off to school where you have good male teachers and good male role models as well as good female teachers and role models, that boy has a much greater likelihood to do well. So we're sort of we're addressing the problem at the symptom end. And at the symptom end, you're never going to find, fantastic solutions. What I'm doing now is working with the White House and the Department of Justice and HHS, the Health and Human Services Department, to try to get programs that solve the problem at the root. So, for example, the dad-deprived children, a significant percentage of them come from homes of divorce. Homes of divorce often occur because when men and women, or men and men, or women and women, when people who love each other are raising a family, and there's all these enormous complications, and they're communicating with each other and criticizing each other's style or way of parenting, it's the Achilles heel of all human beings is our inability to handle personal criticism without becoming defensive. And so that inability leads to arguments and people not understanding each other, and people, therefore, men and women walking on eggshells. And even if they stay together, they're often in minimum security prison marriages. And so whether they're being in a minimum security prison marriage or being in a broken home is not good for children, but especially it's not good for children to be in a broken home, and especially it is not good for boys. When I'm saying it's not good for boys, I mean boys do worse in 70 different areas, 70 plus different areas, when they don't have a significant amount of devoted father involvement. And when I say 70 different areas, I mean everything from depression to suicide to obesity to addiction to video games to addiction to porn. You name a parent's nightmare, and those are more likely to happen, not inevitable, but more likely to happen when there's a minimal amount of father involvement. So if you want to solve the problem at the cause end rather than the symptom end, we really need to pay attention to that cause, the divorce that leads to the children without dads. And if we want to stop the divorces and bring about good marriages, we have to have parent communication training and also children communication training in elementary schools, so boys and girls learn how to communicate with each other rather than bully each other in the case of boys usually, or do other forms of more subtle meanness toward each other in the case of girls usually.
So I know we're talking with Dr. Warren Farrell. He is the author of the book, The Boy Crisis. I'm going to talk about that book and remind you about that book here in a minute. But Dr. Farrell, what you're essentially saying is that we've got to focus on the family, and that the family is breaking down. We're seeing it degrade, essentially, and it was the backbone, and I think still is, of our culture. It has to be. But, this article, again, Gavin Newsom on Monday signed a law that would permanently prohibit willful defiance suspensions in grades 4 and 5. You're wanting to tackle, the root of the problem, but I don't think there's a lot of, I think you saying that this is a family issue is the truth, but it may not be politically correct to say that anymore. Do you kind of get the feeling that folks in California would maybe say that this is not politically correct to suggest that this is why we're having a problem?
Yes, my research does not say, do not go there, Dr. Farrell. That's politically incorrect. I try to go. I've gotten into huge amounts of trouble by just following what the research tells me, and then also what my experience is with, as I said, talking with Barbara Nemko as superintendent of schools in Napa County and other educators. There is so many people out there with a lot of experience, plus my own personal experience helping to raise children. I try to put all of that together and say, okay, what works? Now, let's say we have to take it at the symptom level, and the bill you're referring to is Senate Bill 419, and this is it does exactly what you say, and it does it in both public schools and charter schools. And
Wow.
That is also a problem because charter schools usually have fewer boys with significant problems. Their parents tend to be more involved. They tend to be able to be a bit more self-selective. But nevertheless, if you want to address the issue in schools, some of the best ways of addressing it are, number one, make sure you have a significant number of male teachers. And I don't just mean men like myself. I tend to be sort of a nurturing type of guy. But you need men who are like me. You need men who are more traditional men, like a firefighter or a construction worker, so that no matter what type of boy you have a boy who has a role model of a man that he can identify with, and I can identify with him, and give him a sort of a sense of purpose and help him redirect himself. We're improving with the vocational school level. The children that willfully act up, they tend not to be academically oriented. They're ones that are not comfortable sitting in their seats, taking notes, memorizing the notes, and feeding that back at the next test. But those boys are often very good at doing things. We've gotten better with vocational education, particularly in California, in the last few years, but we have a long way to go. And we saw the warning for this when Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chair, looked at the future of economically, and he said the two biggest problems we have economically are cyber warfare and the crisis that our boys are in.
Wow.
And saying that this is going to lead to boys who do not have their energy channeled well through things like knowing how to do something that bridges the gap between their skill set and the challenges of AI, of artificial intelligence. This is what the schools need to focus on, is making sure that boys have the way of getting the skills to do that. One of the things I found doing the research for the boy crisis is that a lot of boys don't have an interest in academic stuff, but let's say physics and math and chemistry. But if you tell them that the highly paid welders, the ones that get well over $100,000 a year, they know enough physics and enough chemistry to be able to be sophisticated in their welding and get the higher paid jobs. When a boy has a goal in mind, if I do this, I can be a welder, he's far more likely to get his act together and study the physics and the chemistry in order to be a good welder. So boys are very goal-oriented as a rule, especially boys that are not academic boys. Boys want to achieve and they want to have purpose. But if you don't have the school, if you have the schools totally focused on college educations, that is good for many boys like myself, but it's not good for boys that are not academically oriented, and we've been failing to address those boys, not only in vocational education, but in recess. Boys need to be physically active before they learn.
Yes.
And the Centers for Disease Control has found that when boys and girls, interestingly, are engaged in recess, the times engaged in recess and physical activities are actually more productive for studying effectively for a test than additional minutes of studying for a test. So studying is helpful up to a point, but beyond that point, being physically active and stimulating yourself to be receptive to new ideas that you're learning actually comes from a significant amount of recess integrated with the studying.
I mean, as I listen to you talk, and I mean, I get the feeling that you believe that, having the strong traditional masculine presence in our society is the backbone of our society. Again, politically incorrect thing to say. What do you think the phrase, how do you respond when I say that, use the phrase toxic masculinity?
Yeah, a very complex response that I have to that. So there are aspects of masculinity that can become toxic when boys bully each other, when they are sort of constantly exaggerating. But the mistake that feminism has made is to associate that toxic masculinity with male privilege. That toxic masculinity did not come from male privilege. It came from male sacrifice. Throughout every generation has had its war. And with each war, the parents and the society has sort of made boys into heroes if they prepare to be disposable in that war. In order to be be disposable in the hazardous jobs in the workplace, the firefighters and the construction workers construction workers in the United States die at one per hour in the United States, and so we prepare boys to be disposable as a definition of masculinity. But in order to be disposable, you have to discount your feelings. You have to cut off from who you are. You have to develop heroic intelligence. Heroic intelligence is preparation for a short life. It's in contrast with health intelligence, which is preparation for a long life, which both physically and then emotional intelligence, which is preparation for being able to deal with the subtleties of human emotions, to express your own emotions, but not to take them too far, to be other-centered as well as self-centered. Those are things that are all important skill sets. Throughout all of human history, we have focused in the development of our sons on heroic intelligence. As a result of male heroic intelligence, we are not speaking German under Nazi rule. We have been saved from enormous amounts of crime. We have the fires in California have been put out by the firefighters, who are well over almost 100% males in the voluntary area, and about 95% males in the ones that go up there to fight the fires. And so we have an enormous gift that heroic intelligence brings to the country. But we have to say, when our sons are 8, 9, 10 years of age, do we want to be pushing our sons into doing things that are where they get purpose and they get to be called hero and they get the social bribes of the culture by calling them by having them risk their lives? Or do we want to open our sons up to a wide variety of options, multiple senses of purpose that are more matched toward their personality, and not shaming them if they don't become a Marine?
Of course
but also,
not. Yeah.
And that type of thing.
Well,
So
but it also comes back to a dad. I mean, if we have a lot of broken homes with no fathers, a lot of times, you're taught by your dad how to behave, how to be a man.
Exactly. And here is the challenge, and it's a very subtle challenge. When children are brought up predominantly in mom-dominated homes with minimal or no dad involvement, the child is usually protected very well, nurtured very well, and the mom says, "Sweetie, you are really good at music, or you're really good at being an actor, or why don't you go ahead and pursue that?" However, what the dad tends to bring to the family table is discipline, and he brings that discipline through enforced boundaries. And so the father is far more likely to, father and mother will set boundaries the same way. They'll both say, "You can't have your ice cream until you finish your peas." But moms will the kids, of course, will challenge that and try to have as few peas as possible before they have their ice cream. Moms then tend to, especially in a divorce situation, feel guilty about being divorced, feel the child's under a lot of stress, and say, "Okay, I'm not going to get into a big argument over a few peas. So I'll tell you what, sweetie, you have a few more peas and then you can have your ice cream." Dad is far more likely to require the child to finish the task. And so the child who's required to finish the task, to finish the peas before she or he gets the ice cream, is far more likely to develop postponed gratification. The children with postponed gratification are able to complete their dreams. They're able to rehearse for the play, rehearse for the drills that are needed for football or for basketball, and to finish their homework without getting distracted. Those are the boys and girls that succeed. So successful boys and girls tend to have the boundary enforcement, not the boundary setting, but the boundary enforcement that leads to the postponed gratification that is the greatest predictor of success. And so when that element is missing, the element of the father, the discipline, the postponed gratification, when that's missing, boys are encouraged by their mother to have a dream, but they often don't have the discipline to fulfill that dream.
Wow.
And after a while, they become afraid to dream because they know the next dream will just lead to another failure, and they'll be ashamed about that. So they begin to withdraw into video game addiction, withdraw into vicarious dreams being fulfilled. And when it comes to boy-girl time, the girls are not interested in dating losers, so they date. So the boys feel that they're going to be rejected because they will be usually, and so they turn to porn. And porn is basically access to a variety of attractive women without fear of rejection at a price that they can afford. And so then the porn addicts them to getting more and more exciting situations with girls and women because they don't, then the girl or the woman who actually begins to get involved with them feels like they're treated like an object because they're being treated like an object,
exactly.
And then they withdraw. They withdraw from the guy. The guy is convinced that that he's a loser, so he goes back to the porn, and the cycle repeats itself. And so this is the and I've only scraped the tip of the iceberg here, but this is one of maybe 9, 10 significant differences between dad-style parenting and mom-style parenting, and why the children who do the best have what I call checks and balance parenting.
Wow, that's fascinating stuff. We're out of time, Dr. Warren Farrell. I really appreciate your work on this. I want to encourage everybody to, first of all, share this video with your friends, as well as check out your book, The Boy Crisis, Why Our Boys Are Struggling and What We Can Do About It. I think you've gone over a lot of those answers here today on the program. So really appreciate it, Dr. Warren Farrell.
Thank you. It's a pleasure talking with you again.
As always, we'll have you on again soon. Have a great day, sir.
Look forward to that.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
sir.